specializing in the structuring and execution of multi-phase development finance transactions. As the CEO of Cleveland International Fund, he is responsible for formulating and executing Cleveland Investment Fund's strategic vision. He also fosters working relationships with public-private financing and development entities and serves as an officer of investment in the USA USA, the EB5 Industries National Trade Association. Mr. Stephen, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here again in Dubai. I've been here several times, and the hospitality and the welcome is always wonderful. And I really enjoy the conversations that we have, and I enjoy talking about what we're doing in the field of immigration through investment. I'm happy this morning to be able to give you an update on that, primarily as we promote it through the EB5 program, the United States program to bring residency to those seeking residency in the United States through investment in economic development projects. I'm happy to tell you what is going on with that program, what we are doing with it at Cleveland International Fund. We've been one of the more successful regional centers, EB5 regional centers in the United States over the last 10 years. And then also how we're using it also to expand into other opportunities for real estate investment in the United States going forward beyond just for purposes of immigration. And I welcome all questions and obviously after this presentation as well. So again, thank you for being here this morning. Thank you for the hospitality, and let's get into some discussion. This is my background. Thank you for introducing me and for my resume. I've had an interesting background that I never would have thought would have sort of brought me into this area, and perhaps be talking here today in 2018 in Dubai and seeking investment in the United States. My background is primarily in investment banking. I got into the public sector, had an opportunity to be the CFO of a major city, Cleveland, worked for our Chamber of Commerce as its CFO, developed a consulting agency that helped developers find different sources of capital to do interesting projects, primarily in our region of the country. Where I discovered circumstances put me into learning about the EB5 program, which brought me back in many ways to my international roots. My background is both Slovenian on my father's side, and my mother is an immigrant from Germany. Thought somehow in my head that I would get back to sort of the international part of my background, and the EB5 program and what I've been doing over the last several years has brought me there. At this point, I also want to introduce, he can raise his hand, many of you have met him, Adam Blackman, who is my business partner with CIF. Adam and I are the owners of our regional center, along with our Chamber of Commerce. Several years ago, we introduced our business organization to take actually part ownership in our company. I had a few people say, well, why the heck did you do that? And frankly, we saw it as very good business, frankly, to take what we were doing, bringing in foreign capital, introducing our community to the rest of the world, for really by way of their involvement, their ownership, and their endorsement that our business community, our Chamber of Commerce, which is actually one of the largest chambers of commerce in the United States, was behind us. So they have an ownership interest in us. They are part of our governing board. And so what we do is not just the private interest exclusively of Adam Blackman and Steve Stranisha. What we pursue and what we do really has an economic development objective to advance our community. So let me jump in and tell you, perhaps because many in this room may not be as familiar with EB5 specifically, which is a program that we have been primarily utilizing to bring foreign capital into the United States and really achieve the immigration dreams of individuals from all around the world. What that program is all about, I'll do it at a very, very high level, obviously. What we've been doing with it, and what has sort of emerged lately with that program. I'm also going to then talk about our latest offering that we have in the market, which is a little bit different and a little bit new, and really is designed for, frankly, markets like what we're pursuing here in the UAE, which is not only to achieve immigration goals of individuals, but to bring some better return so that as we utilize their capital, that we can put them in a very secured investment and have them earn what we believe is a very attractive return relative to the risk that we are presenting to them. So let's get into it. Very high level EB5, which is I always whatever the phone's on, everybody looks to see whether they're the person doing it. So, anyway, very high level. The EB5 program has actually been around as a form for achieving residency in the United States for a very long time. It's coming up almost on 30 years now. And it was a program to stimulate and to bring investment from overseas into the United States by allowing individuals to take an investment, put it into a specific project that would create at least 10 jobs. At that level, they could make an investment either at a $500,000 level if the project that they were invested in was in an area called a targeted employment area, which was an area that had a certain higher level of unemployment, or at $1 million investment for other areas of the country. The way it has worked up to the present is that the definition of targeted employment area is a very broad one, so that many areas in our community and throughout the country can qualify, so that this program is mainly thought of, and when people talk about it or hear about it, they rarely hear about the $1 million investment. Most often, opportunities are located in TEAs, and the investment for the EB5 program is a $500,000 investment going into a project that creates at least 10 jobs. That's the basics of that. The investment is made, application is made, conditional green card can be issued based on that, and ultimately once the jobs are created and proven, a permanent green card is issued both to the applicant and their immediate family. That's the EB5 program at a very high level, and how it has operated really since 1990. What happened shortly after the program got started was it really wasn't producing a lot, because it was a lot of individual investors who are obviously located overseas, trying to find projects where that project, be it a small restaurant or a small operation, would create 10 jobs. And it was very hard frankly, for that to generate a lot of capital in that manner. So shortly after the program was created, an amendment to the program was passed by our Congress, creating the regional center concept, which is what we are, a regional center designated by our government, by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. What regional centers can do, instead of one by one, is to gather investors for a project, put all those investors together, say 40 investors, you can lend or invest $20 million into a project, and that amount of money can certainly help advance a program, a project, much more than individual investors making individual decisions. You can see the trend, and if you extend this up into 2017 and beyond, while it hasn't grown at the same pace, there continues to be a lot of regional centers throughout the country. The way you become a regional center is you make an application to USCIS. You essentially identify, it's a very thick application, but the bottom line is you identify who you are, who your principals are, the service area within the country that you're going to serve, and the kind of investments that you plan to do. Most to date have chosen real estate as their investment. EB5 is not confined to real estate, but real estate tends to be a very understandable type of investment to go attract for individuals overseas. Sometimes it can be very hard if you're raising money directly for a company to explain across the world, particularly if it's a new kind of company, what that company is and how you can definitely predict it's going to create the number of jobs. If you're raising funds for real estate, it's for a hotel, it's for an apartment building, it's for an office building. People all around the world understand what those things are, and it's very easy to raise funds for that. The way that we are also allowed to count jobs, which we'll talk a little bit about, also helps very much with real estate, because again, for the job creation requirement, meaning that each investor's $500,000 has to create at least 10 jobs. It's not that at the end of the day we go around to a hotel, say this project like this was utilizing EB5 and count each employee. We take the expenditures that were spent on that project, how much was spent to build the project, to order the concrete, to finish out the building. We take those expenditures using an economic impact model and say how much did that expenditure of dollars produce in terms of indirect and induced jobs within the economy. That method allows us to show many more jobs ultimately being created from a particular project, and as a result, bring a lot more EB-5 dollars into a project to help assist that project. Again, this program has been around since 1990, 1992 in terms of regional centers. I'll talk in just a second here about how that has grown over time. But the program, again, is a federal government program that has to be reauthorized. It's not a permanent program. And really, over the last 3 years, the program has operated through short-term renewals. If any of you here are followers of our politics, you know that it's been challenging for our Congress and our administration, whoever the president has been, to agree on things, particularly things that are related to immigration, which, even though this is an investment program, it is also an immigration program. So we have been very active. The EB-5 program has been active, but Congress has not given us a long-term renewal. They have extended it every time. Our most recent expiration date, meaning the program could have gone away, was September 30th, and most recently they extended it. They gave us all the way to December 7th with the program. We fully anticipate, while it's not ideal, that we will continue to get authorizations, and as an industry, one of the things that I work on as part of our national board, our trade association, is to get ultimately and hopefully a long-term reauthorization for the program. So again, in summary and in very quick fashion, this is the history of how EB-5 has been used. It wasn't really used very much. It's sort of an example of how somebody like myself who worked within the field of public finance and financing of public projects wasn't even familiar with this program for many of the years that it was around because it wasn't used actively. We didn't have a regional center, for example, in our part of the country that was raising funds for any projects. Again, because it took a while to raise capital, then investors had to get approved, then the money had to become available. And again, if we also remember the history of what was going on worldwide, and certainly in the United States, in the 1990s and certainly into the year 2000s, it wasn't really hard to get capital for projects. In fact, one of the problems ultimately that led to the recession and the credit crunch was capital and credit was very easy. This was not an easy form of capital to bring to a project, so it wasn't used a lot. The financial crisis changed that. A lot of traditional sources shut down, particularly in the real estate sector. Banks stopped lending. Government funds for projects became less and less because of constraints on local governments. And this source that could go get raised overseas became something that was very available. And a very large market that was interested in U.S. immigration, was interested in residency, was interested particularly in bringing their kids over to go to U.S. universities, and an economy that was doing very well at the time was the Chinese market. So the combination of the credit crunch, a very large market with a lot of funds available to invest, a great desire to come to the United States, made really sort of the perfect opportunity to start bringing a lot of capital from the EB-5 program, really in the years 2009 through 2012, into the program. Now, what happened during that period ultimately was an overuse or over-demand from particularly China, but added to by Vietnam being another country relative to their population, that overused what has always been a 10,000 visa limit on the program. So while regional centers from across the country can go around and raise capital, there's only 10,000 visas available for those investors to have available to ultimately get that green card. And what has happened during the most recent years was, as I pointed out here, you can see sort of what happened. It doesn't really take large growth of regional centers, many more projects out there, great demand from China, only 10,000 visas available each year, such that if you are a Chinese investor, now you go through the process of, or you've gone through that process over the last couple of years, chosen a project, made an investment, made an application, you get approved, which is a somewhat lengthy process of about 24 months, and you get ready to get your green card. The amount of visas that are available for you as Chinese investor has been overused, not only for this year, but for several years going back. So you are in the line. So a program that for investors, and for investors in all other markets, such as this, is a 5 to 6 year program. For them, it is close to 15 years now, if you're a Chinese investor starting today, to get a conditional and permanent green card through this program. So the market that has been the largest market for EB-5 has really effectively shut down because of the over-demand that has come from that over the last several years. Now, where does that leave us today, and why we're still very excited and have been trying to build a base of interest in a number of other countries, including coming here to the UAE, is that it has opened up for regional centers that have attractive EB-5 offerings to not just go to China and pitch their projects there. It is really, I think, opened up regional centers to presenting to the rest of the world, and for the rest of the world to see what EB-5 is about. We've gone through different parts of the world, particularly as this situation was developing over the last several years. And it's interesting how little was known about EB-5 as an investment vehicle to achieve immigration to the United States. What has also happened is that a lot of people got out of the EB-5 business because they said, well, I know how to do it. I'm going to go to China. I used to joke, I'm going to open up my bag. People are going to throw money in it from Chinese investors, and I'm going to have money for my project. When it didn't become that easy, and it was never that easy, they are slowly but surely getting out of the EB-5 business. And I would argue for opportunities now in places like UAE, you will be seeing, and we're not the only one, although I think we're an example of a very good regional center. You will see good projects from good regional centers because we are committed to this program for the long term and to continue to use EB-5 to raise capital for our projects. And what you'll also see, and I'll get into a little bit more with our most recent offering, is that there's still a lot of competition. We know we have to present these across a lot of different footprints. They're not as big as the population in China as an opportunity for a market. So we have to do things to make our investments attractive. And it goes beyond meeting just the requirements of the immigration program, meaning showing a project that creates at least 10 jobs, showing a project that has a strong ability to repay capital. But we have to give something more at the end of the day. So we are increasingly creating projects that provide opportunities for greater returns. Typically, if somebody gave you a description of EB-5 as an investment opportunity, they would say, this regional center is going to take your capital, they're going to rent your capital for a period of 5 or 6 years, pay you very little interest return, and maybe you'll get your money back at the end of the day. What we're doing now, what we know we need to bring to markets like this, is we need to bring very strong projects. It has to absolutely show in a very strong manner that it will meet the job creation. In other words, no questions that you will get your green card at the end of the day. Strong security provisions for the same reason, and to give you a much better return. What we see in that as well is an opportunity not only to continue to use EB-5 in that manner, but to also then expand beyond EB-5 for attracting investment capital for other projects on a regular market basis going forward. So, again, give you some of the basics, so as we talk, or either in this presentation or one-on-one about projects, you know a little bit about the terminology of how these kind of investments are structured. Again, the strict requirement for when you look at a project or an offering, a regional center like us presents it to you, one of the first things you should ask is, show me how this project creates jobs, and show me what your estimate is on how it creates jobs and how that will come about. Again, the strict requirement is that a project show you that it can create at least 10 jobs for your $500,000. Most at least come in with showing you an analysis that can create well that coverage, if you will, cushion in case something goes wrong. We candidly like to be well north of 15 jobs per investor. We've had the opportunity to have projects that pay north of 40 jobs per investor. We have one that we're finishing up right now that does that. What that gives us is for those individuals who really want very, very, very low risk of any question of getting that green card at the end of the day. That's their 95% reason for making this investment, we can show projects that have absolutely no question that it will meet that basic requirement. That is the bottom line requirement to get the green card at the end of the day, is meeting job creation. Again, the way most of these are structured when you're talking to a regional center such as us is that Cleveland International Fund is our parent corporation. As we approach each project, we set up separate limited liability corporations for each project. We are the managing member, and we bring individual investors into those LLCs. Within the terminology of the EB-5 program, that entity that we raise capital in, that in turn takes the funds and lends it to the project, is called the new commercial enterprise. So as you see here in discussions, you'll be an EB-5 expert if you know the term NCE. NCE is the entity that we help establish, that we attract investors in. We then in turn provide either debt or equity, and we are mainly a lender to projects. We find that to be a more secure way, a stronger way to present to investors that you will get your funds back, is that we lend it and we get certain security that we will get repaid. And we do that to the job creating entity. If you want to think about it in terms of a real estate project, that's the real estate developer, that's the real estate project. The entity that's, say, building the hotel that we lend to is called the JCE, the job creating entity. The time frame, which is always probably the top question as we start talking to people looking at EB-5, is what time frame am I talking about here? If I come to you and you have an offering, as we do now to make an investment, what is the time frame for getting that? At the point that you make that, you choose that project, and whenever a regional center is talking to you, you don't write a check just to that regional center and say, put it in whatever project. They are presenting to you an individual project that they are raising capital for, that your money is going to go into. When you make that decision, fund the $500,000, you also in turn make an application to our government. It's called an I-526 application. It goes to USCIS for processing. I have to tell you, unfortunately, that when we started doing this close to 10 years ago, that processing time was about 6 months. You get an approval, you take that essentially to the consular's office, travel to the United States, and you get a conditional green card. Something unfortunately we can't do anything about, but that processing time now is around 24 months. If you do talk to a regional center who says, I can make that happen faster to you, I suggest you run away from them, because that's not true. Unfortunately, we do have some people in our industry who make promises like that, but we're all in the same boat together in terms of processing time and applications. And that is the time it takes to get that approval. With that approval, you can then get your conditional green card. Because I know in some other countries, to our competitive disadvantage, can get you a passport or something faster. Our time frame to get that ability to get that green card is 2 to 2.5 years. Now, at that point, for you and your immediate family, you have conditional residency in the United States. You can come and go. There's no difference between that and permanent residency other than it's conditional. It has to be renewed. But basically, while that project then is going on and creating the jobs with the funds you've given, you have the ability to access the United States as do your children who are under the age of 21 when that occurs. What occurs at that point is that when you get that green card, you have to wait essentially 2 years for the jobs, to prove the jobs are being created. That, in our terminology, and you may hear the term sustainment period. You have to sustain your investment for that period of time. So, again, let's do some very rough calculations, and everybody's situation might be different. We have ones where applications get processed out of order, things like that. But in general, 2 years for approval, several months then to ultimately get that green card, maintain that investment for 2 years. At that point, you can get your capital back if your investment is able to pay your capital back at that point. You have met your sustainment period. You do not yet have your permanent green card, because to do that, you have to make application to do that. And unfortunately, that's another 2-year process. But again, you can, 2 important things at that point, roughly within the 4 to 5 year period of this investment, is that number one, you can make application for your permanent green card, and you have the ability to get your capital back at that point if the project that you're invested in, if the loan has matured and if you have the ability to do that. Your green card should become permanent in terms of a permanent approval in roughly a 5 to 6 year period. Now, that's the time frame, which is totally different for the Chinese now. because of the over-demand that's come from that. But in markets such as UAE and the other nationalities that obviously are primarily here, that is the current time period. We are at a point, I will tell you, that we have several other countries that are close to what has happened to China. One of the next largest market right now is India, for example. They still operate within this time frame. They have not, the terminology is called retrogression, meaning that they have to wait to get that green card after initial approval. But they're now beginning to use this program at a greater pace, that they will be in a similar circumstance, not as bad as China, but the prediction is a line will start forming for Indian applicants next year. Other countries that are close to that are Taiwan, South Korea, and Brazil. I think I've named all of them that are close to that. Again, in terms of certain basics, I've mentioned that we've been talking sort of about the immigration timeline. Aligned with that, but not necessarily tied directly together, is the time frame on the investment or loan that was made with your funds. A regional center such as us makes loans to projects for this period of time, and our loan maturities may be anywhere from 4 to 6 years. So somewhere in that period of time, we get repaid, your sustainment period is expired, and we have the ability to pay you back. You might say, what happens if I'm not through that sustainment period and you get paid back? We have a new phenomenon in our industry where if we get funds back and we can't give them back to you, you say, well, what if you did give them back to you? If we did give them back to you, that would violate the immigration program and you would lose your residency status. So what we have done, and we've had experience doing this, is we will redeploy that or reinvest it in another similar project that can pay you back within a period of time and when your sustainment period will be done. Again, we try to, in terms of the kinds of loans that we make, we do that in a manner so that we see a strong possibility if we present it to you as a potential investor that it can be repaid, not usually through it being amortized during that period of time, but into, again, a commercial real estate project which will have a refinancing of its capital in that period of time, or a possible sale of its capital. We have now gone through this with many of our projects, where they have gone through a cycle where they have refinanced and repaid us. And again, something to check whether you're talking to us or whether you're talking to anybody is what is your experience in getting your projects to refinance and repay investors? We're probably a very good track record on that. Again, leading into the present time, and I'm going to next sort of pivot, talk about what's going on now with it, is that leading up to this, we've had many, many regional centers running around the globe. You saw that trend line that I showed you before of how many regional centers are out there pitching projects all around. Frankly, it was very hard. It's very hard, as we think, a very experienced regional center, to sometimes get the noise down from around others who have not done as much as we have. And again, the trend has been primarily dictated by the terms of Chinese investors who were looking exclusively at the green card side and the repayment of their capital. It's traditionally offered extremely low returns. Some of our first investments actually offered 0 to investors. Typically, particularly for offerings that have been sold primarily in China, it's been 1% or less often for investors. That's why I refer to it as we're renting your capital for a period of time, and your return is, in those cases, is obviously almost exclusively the green card. Both of these things, as we go ahead, are changing in the marketplace. So, what is behind some of the new opportunities? What are you seeing in the market? Frankly, folks in this room, if you're interested, and others that we talk to when we come to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, are really at some of the best points to consider EB5 if this is fitting your circumstances. As I mentioned, the China market, for the reasons given, has really gone away as an opportunity, as an area where regional centers, including ourselves, can raise new capital. So we are going into other markets. When we are doing that, we are needing to present a very strong product from that standpoint. Highly secured real estate projects showing the potential for very strong job creation, so that there's no question that the job creation, and really very little willingness Although there's a desire for much higher returns, which we'll talk about here in a second, of the traditional 0 to 1%. Not a great desire with this investment, because oftentimes it's still perhaps the first time an individual has invested in the United States for anything, not to be highly speculative. So, if I was to summarize what we're trying to model our offerings on in the future, again, we're real estate lenders. It's our background. My background's on the finance side of it. My partner Ed is on the construction side, understanding real estate projects, is to do really very secured real estate in proven markets and with proven developments and developers. We get, and sometimes Adam and I sit around talking about all the crazy ideas of people who come to us wanting to finance different kinds of attractions and entertainment venues and things that are not very well known. And we basically stick to things that are very well known both to us and to people that we're talking to, be it a hotel, be it an entertainment complex within a mixed-use development, be it apartments. Something that we can feel very comfortable that when we sit across the table from somebody, they understand what we're talking about. They say, oh yeah, we have those in our country too. And we can understand what makes a good, successful development in those areas. We're also trying to structure them in a way, hopefully this grabs your attention, where depending on the risk involved in the project, because again, I think we have a lot of financial professionals, business professionals here, people understand that if you're taking your money and we're putting you into a project where you hold the first mortgage on the property, you are very highly well secured. We're acting like a bank for that project. And that will be at a lower rate of return for us and then ultimately for the investors. And we have done those kind of investments and are doing those kind of investments where we are making first mortgage loans, senior secured loans, I can't say it strongly enough, into a project. We are the first dollars being paid from tenant leases and the like. But then we also do other kinds of loans where we are the second lender. We are behind the bank. And obviously in those situations we are asking for a higher rate of return and passing on a higher rate of return to our investors. Again, for the most part, we like the idea of being a lender as opposed to taking an equity investment. That keeps us obviously a little restricted in terms of getting into the teens, 11, 12% in terms of return. But it gives us a maturity date that the developer has to hit so that we can pay our investors. It gives us security and collateral that you don't have in an equity situation. And we still think we can achieve, again, as we point out here, depending on where we are in the capital stack and the nature of the investment, we are now, even for EB5 investments, looking at trying to return to our investors 5 to 10% over that period of time that an investment would be outstanding, 4 to 6 years. Again, something that we think should be highly attractive because in addition to that, you get the green card during that period of time. We also see as we get into newer markets that this might be something beyond just doing EB5. There's a lot of interest conveyed to us that they say, well, after I do this EB5, or maybe during this period, I would like to do more real estate investment in the United States. And we think we have identified and know and can identify for investors very strong projects in our region, very strong developers, where we can bring investors back and partner with them, perhaps even for equity type investments for their projects going forward. And one of the most difficult things we find is that people don't know where to go or where they might find those investments. There's a lot of knowledge of the big cities in the United States, but there's a big crowd in the New York Cities and the Los Angeles, and there's lots of developers and a lot to sort through in that. We think we can identify an area of the country that we serve with a lot of strong projects, a lot of desire for capital, where you can play a very major role and not be one of 100 investors in a Manhattan, another Manhattan hotel. And as I've reminded people, I said, hotels fail in New York City too. They don't just fail in other parts of the country. So we can really find some very niche, strong possibilities within our marketplace, working with strong developers, where you can play a major role if you want to go beyond EB5 and do other kinds of real estate investment in the United States. What we also show again in terms of those features, and I've sort of referenced this, so I'll be quickly on these last 2 points, is that we can show you a very clear way that you're going to get your capital back out of these projects based on our experience working with these developers, and as I mentioned before, a network of very strong developers, both regionally and nationally, who we have had a lending experience with to date. This is the area, that we serve. Maybe not. We're those red noted cities in there. We're not out in the middle of nowhere in terms of the area that we serve. Many people in the room obviously may know where Cleveland, Ohio is, Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati. This is the service area. We are headquartered in Cleveland. We've done most of our projects to date, but we are able to serve and make loans and real estate loans in this area of the country. Short plane rides to Chicago, New York, Washington, D.C., relatively short car rides to there. We have increasingly had, as we raise more capital, individuals come visit. They want to see the projects. We actively invite folks to come. And usually what we're showing them is we're not showing them a piece of dirt. There's going to be a great office building here someday and so forth. It's usually a project that's already underway by the time that we're raising their capital, so they can be assured that their investment is going to go to work right away to create those jobs. And to date in that area, we have done real estate projects of and raised capital of over $240 million, making a big difference in our community and a big difference for our investors. Some pictures of projects that we have been involved with: real-life buildings in a real-life city, major hospital, university hospitals, major restoration of an old bank building into a downtown grocery store, another portion of university hospitals. The Flats project is in that middle tier of pictures right there. We'll talk a little bit about that some more. We've raised significant capital for 2 phases. You can see it's a waterfront development in our downtown area. We've also helped create an office building for Ernst & Young, which holds part of its national headquarters in Cleveland, Ohio. We've also been part of helping American Greetings Corporation, a major greeting card corporation in the United States, as part of a mixed-use development there near our University Circle area. And we are actually just about to get repaid in the next couple months for the first mortgage loan we made for a new convention hotel, new Westin hotel downtown. So a lot of activity, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge of these different asset classes and how to invest and who to invest with in our marketplace. Oops. Again, pictures of sort of projects to date. We have a 10th one actually that we're finishing up. It would kind of throw off the balance here, 3, 3, and 3. So I guess maybe that's the other reason we didn't. There's a 10th one that we are just raising a few more investment units for. We have those available if individuals want to discuss those a little bit more. But you see a couple key points, and you can kind of read them. But let me make a couple points about the numbers and the projects. You can see they're all real estate projects. We're very proud of those stamps of repaid. We've actually repaid $104.5 million. It's over 200 investors who've had their capital repaid. I mention that and emphasize that because if you do some research on EB5, not everybody repays or has repaid their investors in a timely way. Bottom line for us, it is about you getting your conditional green card. It's about creating the jobs in the projects. It's about you getting your permanent green card. And it's about you getting your money back. And certainly, to date, while we have not offered significant return, it's about getting whatever that return is. And again, we have paid that on a timely basis as well. The other noteworthy thing, so that you know, and you can it's important to judge. And if you do wind up talking to other regional centers about projects, for you to bear in mind, EB5 is never the majority of the investment in a particular project. It is, usually some portion of it supplemented by the developer's equity, supplemented by perhaps bank financing, by government funding. That is usually because if you did the whole project, there wouldn't be enough jobs there to support that level of investment. So we have been a significant part of, usually on average, about 40% of a particular project's financing, and that is typical for an EB5 project. So again, you're making a list of questions to ask whether it's me or whether it's any other EB5 regional center that comes to town. You say, tell me about the other sources of capital. You're telling me about this project. Tell me about the other sources of capital that go into this project. And are they committed? Are they happening there? Because you need to make sure when you make an investment in this project that it's really going to happen. And what does that mean, really going to happen? Does it have the government approvals? Does the developer have his plans together? And are the other sources of capital beyond EB5 in place so the project can occur, that's how you create jobs. When there's been problems in EB5, a lot of times it's been at the very starting gate of the project. I make an investment and nothing ever happens. The developer doesn't get the rest of his capital. I've heard as I've traveled and been put in touch with other people, frankly, sometimes some very smart people said, well, they told me they had everything in place. And they go, well, did you check that they had everything in place? They had their capital, and they never got their green card because the project never happened because they didn't have all their money. So, very bad situations for certain folks. Again, I'll speak to this briefly, and it's in our brochure, which I know is sitting out here. We're proud of that. I think somewhere on there, it's under www.clevelandinternationalfund.com. We've actually just redone our website, something my partner is very proud of, as we spearheaded that project. So please, when you get a chance, look at our new website, because there's a lot of information on there, not only about EB5, but about the nature of the projects that we've done. And you'd say, well, those are the projects you've done. I point that out because those are the kind of projects we'll continue to do, because that's what we know, that's what we feel comfortable and experienced in telling you that we will make a good investment on your behalf and get your capital back. Very important track record that we're proud of. Nearly 100% on those conditional green cards. I would point out the one where we had a denial. They did not have very qualified counsel working with them. They did, after they got denied, come back and invest in another project with us and get approved. So my staff says we ought to say that's 100%, but we did technically get one denial out of all that. The average for our industry, by the way, is 80%. So 1 out of 5 applications gets denied. And again, it's because the project is deficient. Perhaps they're not working with the right counsel. Perhaps they're not getting good guidance on things like demonstrating source of funds. We help work through that all with you. Obviously, we bring the project, but we also make sure you're getting good advice from the standpoint of counsel, particularly as you have to demonstrate your funds for the application purposes. No disapprovals on permanent green cards, which means our projects have all reduced the number of jobs required for the program. And as you go down to this bottom left-hand block, the ability and the track record of showing that we repay our investors because our projects repay us within the time frames allowed. The right-hand column, which we'll go ahead with and actually show you a real example of what we're doing going forward, is that as we look ahead to the new ways to do EB5 and the new ways to combine it with other kinds of capital, is that we bring higher investment returns to our investors. Make our product even better than it has been traditionally, particularly for new markets that demand it. And what we also have is, since we've been doing this for a while, and again, even before Adam and I hooked up and did this EB5 thing, he worked a lot in our community on the real estate construction side. I worked on the finance side. We have a strong knowledge of our area, of the strong developers, of the government agencies that we have to work with to make sure projects happen. We are, as I refer to it, an active lender. We don't just sit back and fill out forms. We roll up our sleeves, work with developers that we know, build off of relationships, which in our cases go back 20, 25 years within our community, really knowing the people who are capable of getting things done. Some awards that we're proud of, we do stand out in our industry. Again, if you go around and solicit and you look at different regional centers, you will find that a lot of them are in the big cities in the United States, New York City, Los Angeles, Florida, wonderful places. I visit them, we go there. We have done this, and we've done this very successfully, really right about at the same scale as those doing it in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, our service area is not insubstantial. 13 million people live in the area that we serve. But what I tell people, particularly those who are not as familiar with our area of the country, is that it gives us an ability to select the best developers who need capital. We don't get crowded out by other things, and you can judge, based on our experience, our developers, and our success, that these projects can work for you in terms of immigration and investment purposes. And we do have certain things, as we go ahead, go to this slide yet, things that you might not know. You don't know a lot about Cleveland. I used to put up here, we also have Cleveland Cavaliers in our major sports teams that have LeBron James, but if any of you are basketball fans, you know we did lose him to Los Angeles this year. But he's still a Clevelander. He still actually lives in Cleveland in the off season. Has put us on the map in that regard. And of course, when I come to Dubai, I talk about our major healthcare sector, which is a significant part of our economy. Really, with the dominant player being the Cleveland Clinic, which again is very well known in Dubai. In fact, the individual who's running the Dubai hospital here is now the head person come back to Cleveland to run the Cleveland Clinic Foundation in Cleveland. Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals that we have lent money to make us a very major healthcare sector in the United States. Major financial services sector with major regional banks like Key Bank and these other, really kind of going back to our manufacturing roots, companies like Sherwin-Williams, Eaton Corporation. I mentioned that we also helped American Greetings Corporation. So a good number of corporate headquarters in our area. We have also, and also being a relatively close place to travel to, we have turned into somewhat of a destination in hospitality in terms of a revived convention center, some major iconic cultural institutions. Our art museum is ranked in the top 5 in the country. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is based in Cleveland, Ohio. If you ever come to visit, it is a must-see. And as a result of that, significant new development. Our theaters, as mentioned up here, a little well known that beyond walking around Broadway, if you want to walk around the downtown that has the second most theater seats and an active theater venue, it's in Cleveland, Ohio, right across the street from our office. And from that, really, as the economy has revived, our downtown, assisted by EB5, has seen $19 billion in new investment over the last 5 years. So it's a real place, significant investment, significant opportunity for continued investment. Whoops. What did I do? This is where I screwed up last time. I don't want to jinx it, so I'm going to skip over. That was another slide saying nice things about Cleveland and some of the opportunities there. I did want to put this up there, maybe a little out of order, breaking the flow on that. But I did want to point out another aspect of what we're about and what we're doing here is that as the EB5 industry has emerged, there's been a lot more, if not direct requirement, industry requirement that we do things the right way. Particularly as we go to new markets and they say, I don't know who you are. How can I be certain that you operate out of a garage somewhere in the United States and you're going to take my money away from me? And in fact, there have been operators in our industry who do that. We are very proud of the project due diligence that we did. Even though we are not required, a couple of years ago, Adam and I decided that we were going to sell all of our offerings, which are securities, regulated by the SEC and our other regulators. We're going to do that through a registered broker-dealer, Primary Capital. I'm a registered representative of Primary Capital, which is registered with the SEC, with FINRA, so that you know that beyond this, we are actually putting ourselves forward to be regulated and have oversight. Other people are checking that the disclosures that we are making to you about a project are truthful. The documents that you see here, the documents that we have specific to our new offering, for example, you'll see Primary Capital on there. That's not just a logo. That means that their securities professionals went through here. They don't work for me. They went through and they said every item in there is truthful and is accurate disclosure, something that you should take great comfort in that we do that. Not all regional centers sell through broker-dealers. We thought that this was the right way to present, that we mean what we say and what we present to you is accurate disclosure. We are audited every year, and all of our individual projects are audited. Those are made available to our investors if they want to see that. And we have active compliance and government oversight by both local authorities that we work with. We sell a lot of our issues through our Port Authority, which is a regional economic development authority, and get advice from legal counsel both on immigration and corporate matters. So I did want to pause and make these points because we're proud that we do it this way. We think it should give you comfort that as I stand up here, not just a pretty face telling you whatever you want to hear, but that others check our work, check the information that we provide. And in an area, in any kind of securities industry, there is fraud. There are people who don't do things the right way, and we want to represent very clearly by listing who we work with, how we do things, and how we take very seriously the raising of capital and the trust that you show in us by making investments into our projects. I want to talk to you a little bit now, kind of wrapping up, about a new offering that we have. As I mentioned, we actually are closing out an existing offering, which I think maybe some in this room have seen because we've met with them before that we're interested in. There's some very attractive features to that. It's called One University Circle, a project actually that is nearly complete, so it's created jobs. We have some very favorable economics to that as well, if you're interested in it. It also already had some government approvals. We think we will wrap that up shortly. There are some units left, so if there are those in this room who are really ready to invest through EB5 now or in the very near term, we probably want to sit down and talk to you about that as perhaps the best opportunity for you now. But we are just launching this new offering, and again, indicating that we are going to continue to bring new offerings and investment opportunities to the marketplace. And tell you a little bit about this feature because it touches on some of the trends that I mentioned before. Flats East Bank Phase 3. And as you saw from our previous, they said, oh, they invested in flats. Yes, we invested in the first phase of that project. I mentioned the Ernst & Young office tower. The second phase of that project, which included restaurants and residential. And now there's a third phase of that project that we're going to have the opportunity to do a really nice investment for. We have this part of the presentation as well in a little booklet. So if you do have, in addition to learning about us, if you have some particular interest in what I want to learn or have record of what he was telling me about this flats project, our fundraise for this project probably will go through the end of this year into next year. So this is not something, say if I want to think about this a little bit, this sounds like something I want to give some thought to. Please take one of those as well, and we'll have follow-up on that. Again, give you a little history of what the Flats East Bank is as part of our downtown. It's actually a total development. It's about 25 acres on our waterfront in downtown Cleveland, of about a total ultimate development of about $750 million. And it's really creating a little neat neighborhood within downtown. For people who live there, people who work there, people who come entertain there. Starting with the first phase of the project, what we're very happy about are two of those phrases. We've actually, of that amount, we've lent $69 million to the project. $44.5 million has been repaid, and the balance is still paying, and it's not come due yet. So it has a track record of repaying us. This project, this developer, I'll talk about the developer in a second. And it's continuing to perform very well. An office tower that is basically 100%. When you're 95% leased in an office tower, you're fully leased. Retail fully leased and very strong residential occupancy. You see some of the names there might be familiar to you in terms of tenants that are in here, from CBR, Richard Ellis, Ernst & Young, Wells Fargo, and Starwood Brand Hotel today. Here's some pictures of that first phase. Here's some pictures of that second phase. I didn't know I pressed all those buttons. And here's the project site for phase 3. There are some small, yet to be developed parcels that were always contemplated to be part of the third phase. Very experienced developer here who frankly wanted to do this in, as I would say, bite-sized pieces. That we would bring this onto the market, then we would bring this part onto the market, and then we would have some premier spaces still left. This is a parcel that is right on the riverfront there. You can see it's actually a green area, which has been left this way, not intended to be a park, but to be a future development site. I will tell you a little story about this, because we've been very comfortable and pleased with working with this developer. When we went to the second phase of the development, I said, I want the collateral, I want a mortgage on this piece of property, even though it wasn't going to be developed as part of the second phase. And my thinking was, he was going to come back and wanting to do this next phase, and if I had a mortgage on it, then he'd have to come to me to do the financing. So that's where we are today. I can't say every decision is perfect, but this is one that I think that we plan to set up for some good possibilities as we're now moving forward. And again, to give you a perspective on where this site is, you can see the areas that are greenish and blue. That's the areas that have already been developed. This flats the green areas have been developed already. The blue areas are part of phase 3. The area that you just saw there is that area along the riverfront that'll be our collateral for phase 3. Separate with other financing that the developer has raised, he will be doing another part of phase 3 that will include a movie theater and some apartments. We are not part, they're going together at the same time, but our part of the project, as we talk about what the features are of that, we are the lead financing agent for the blue area along the riverfront, and I will tell you in just a second here what that involves. So that's some pictures of what this development will be. The top part being that portion that we're financing along the riverfront, portion involving apartments and movies down below. And this area, this particular project that we will be financing is really going to be an area where 4 different really cool venues, entertainment venues, will fit in, done by operators, very experienced operators out of Chicago, Nashville, and Cleveland, Ohio. I should mention with our developer, he's had a national reputation. He's worked actually for Starwood as well as running major corporations, and has a lot of relationships beyond Cleveland, Ohio in terms of the kind of tenants that we can get. The key part of this is that when this breaks ground and our funds will be invested into this project, there will be leases in place for all the space. All 4 venues will be under lease, prepared to pay rent once the building is built and occupied. There's a 4th one, but these are some of the concepts. If you're traveling to the States in the meantime, certainly to come visit us. But this concept of Jack and Jameson's, if you go to Nashville, is a barbecue place in Nashville, Tennessee. The Hampton Social and the Basement is a north end of Chicago, is a very well-known and very successful concept restaurant, a blues bar that is in Chicago area with an operator who's been very successful with it. The 4th venue is from a Cleveland operator who's been very successful in our warehouse district with a Asian concept restaurant. The thought being, this has premier views right on the riverfront, combined amongst these that you can move between them with strong operators that know what they're doing. Probably can't read this really well, but there is, and particularly if you go online and check, it's a project that again has already got some media attention in terms of its going forward. And really on the issue of, will this project really happen? This is a project that follows 2 very successful phases for this. We're very happy to be able to be participating in this 3rd phase. Scott Wolstein, who was the CEO of DDR, a major REIT in the United States, went on to work for Starwood, and is now doing his own development, is the lead individual behind this, and a very experienced track record of being a developer of these kind of particularly mixed-use kind of developments, been in the hotel sector, the office sector, and the retail entertainment sector. A couple of major country clubs in our area were developed by him. His family is following in his father's footsteps, who was a major developer in Northeast Ohio for many years. I know this might be hard to read, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It is in the presentation book if you're interested in taking with you some of the details of the flats offering. Presents sort of the financials, the summary financials for the project. I'll just highlight a couple things that I think you can see from your seats. In total, it's a modest-sized project, but we're going to be in the first position, the senior mortgage. Our funds that we are raising for this will be in the senior position on that, and the senior pledge on the property, senior lien on all the tenant revenues, the tenant lease payments that come from that, investing at $12.5 million into the project. In our coverage, our debt service coverage on our loan that we're making, which in turn pays investors, as you see here, starts at a comfortable but modest 1.3 times coverage and grows to 1.7 coverage. So we are in a first position, and we are covered by 70 times what we need to service the debt and service our investors. This is the structure of it, and I told you if you learn those terms, NCE and JCE, you come back to help you in following this presentation. We raise money in that middle box right there, and this is a little tutorial on EB5 and LLC investment in the United States. We create a company that we manage, CIF manages, as we have our other 10 to 12 individual companies that we've managed to date. We raised $12.5 million into that through different units. Manager holds some of the units. We raised at $50,000 per unit, up to $12.5 million. Those are in turn used to lend to the borrower. That's the entity that the developer has created. A little bit different here. Again, if you get into the details, happy to walk through this. We have in the past done these loans in our community by purchasing bonds from the Port Authority. We have all the security of a regular loan transaction, but the bond financing brings advantages to the developer in terms of saving on things like sales tax on construction. So we have utilized that. And I'll point out, the Port Authority only gets involved as a conduit, as we refer to it, a conduit lender here for projects that they think are very important within the community. So we do take that as a bit of endorsement. Again, quickly, for general understanding here today, we're doing something different with this offer. We are raising both EB5 investors and non-EB5 investors. And we have frankly already raised some of the non-EB5 investors. They say, oh, that's interesting. Where do you get non-EB5 investors from? We are actually going back to that $100 million, 200 investors that we repaid, that had a good experience with CIF, where we got them their green card, we repaid them, we paid them their interest, and many of them are choosing to invest in us. But now, obviously, they don't need EB5 anymore. They want to make a market rate of return. And while we are not obviously suggesting double-digit returns, we are, for a first mortgage loan, for being the bank, we are offering them as Class A investors a preferred return, meaning that on a quarterly basis they will get interest payments equal to 6.25% on their investment. The EB5 investors, because they're also getting the green card, will get 2.5%. But what we also have here is we have the ability to get upside from the developer for this project, so that the ultimate returns that we are projecting out of this project, total 4-year return from this project, and we have a range here. We've got an independent appraisal done, that's the lower end of the range, and we have the developer's projection. So if you are just an EB5 investor in this project, between your regular return and your upside return upon maturity, 4-year maturity, you paid in 4 years, we projected you could earn anywhere between a 3.3% annual return and a close to 5% annual return. What we have been suggesting, and what we have some interest, is if you have the means, and if you have an interest in earning a higher return, you can buy both Class B interest for your EB5 purposes and combine that with Class A. They are pari passu. They share in the same, they pay different amounts, but they share in the same collateral. And if you do that, if you make $1 million investment by one Class A, by $500,000 in Class A and $500,000 in Class B, you could earn up to a 6.6 return, and then higher with larger investment. So a larger investment combined with EB5 could get you a green card, and for a first mortgage project where you are in the first position and repaid in 4 years, up to over an 8% return. We think this is something that could be of interest, obviously not only for EB5 purposes, but to bring capital in that expects a higher rate of return. And we're getting good response to this. So this is something that if you have the interest, particularly in EB5, but also the means to enhance your return, we can make that return better if you can invest more in this project. A rate 8% in the EB5 realm is unheard of, but it's something if you have the means to do that, we think you ought to consider. Again, to point out, at the end of the day, if you're looking at this from an EB5 standpoint, tell me what the jobs are. You told me that's what I'm supposed to ask here to make sure that this job can get me what I need. We have this project intended only to have 5 EB-5 investors, so we think we'll fill this pretty quickly. 50 job requirement. This produces 103 jobs. So this project produces actually double the amount required for EB-5. And oops, I'll go back to that. That's all the fine print. The reason the fine print I'll give you comfort is, remember I told you we work through a broker dealer, so we have to put this disclosure up that this is relative to a securities offering. But I hope that wasn't too long. I hope I both gave you some insight into EB-5, into who CIF is, our commitment to go to all parts of the world to continue to raise capital for our region, and both for EB-5 and also to be at the cutting edge in terms of providing new kinds of means for attracting investors, particularly understanding their desire to earn higher rates of return. Beyond EB-5, we're going to continue to explore that, looking ahead. And so again, if EB-5 is of interest, we are interested in talking to you. If U.S. real estate and earning money on that is of your interest, you can see we're moving into that non-EB-5 area as well. And we're interested in talking to you or to your associates on all those fronts. And I really do thank you for your attendance today and your patience. And I think Saif is going to follow up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. I have a few questions. From the Middle East, you have a lot of different nationalities living here. Now, when it comes to the green card or the U.S. government's preference to choice of nationalities in order to give the green card or the visa, how does that work for countries where there are there are countries or nationalities who are not favored? And you also, if you could share some honest opinion about the present administration's attitude towards immigrants, and also the current EB-5 is, it's going to be up to December. And what's going to be the fate of this program, post? So if investors need to rush, is it the time limit that they have? Just a few words that you can share.
Yeah, well, there was a lot there. Try not to take too long. You are, when you apply, it is your nation of origin. So if you're here and you're Indian, you're counted as an Indian on that. And I mentioned there are a couple of countries that are close on retrogression. We have been talking to a lot of folks from India, both who are in the States currently, and those who are in India, those who are here. And we want to sell. We also want to point out to them is that you could be in a similar situation on that waiting line. That nice time frame of 5 to 6 years for you to be permanent for you and your family is going to change if you wait. We're already being told that by the State Department. So I think as relative here, that's something to bear in mind. We have offerings ready to go. The other thing, maybe getting to your last question next, about the fate of EB-5, is that we do expect the program to be extended. We have been working for some time to get the program extended on a permanent basis, as I said. We have been caught up in the whole immigration debate because I joke that we should stop saying we're an immigration program, we're an investment program, different eye than immigration. But we are nevertheless an immigration program. And if we are successful with that, we know that there will be some changes coming along with getting a long-term authorization. And some of them are sort of already happening. For example, there are already proposed regulations that just haven't been finalized that would increase the investment. So the other reason, if you think this is something you're going to do, another reason to look at acting relatively soon is that we know either with the next extension or with these regulations out there that investment amount of $500,000 is going to go up. Say how they've talked about $800,000, they've talked about $900,000. The regulations have talked about over $1 million, but it's going to go up. Is the point. And while we've been saying that for a while, it's going to go up, it's going to go up, it really will at some point here. So we expect the program to continue. It may stay short-term for a while, but there are changes coming to the program. It does overall have bipartisan support, Democrats and Republicans, this program. So we're not worried about it going away. And certainly if you want to be 100% certain and you're ready to make a decision, you can eliminate all uncertainty if you act before December 7th. But I'll be honest, we think it'll be around after that too. So, but again, it could come with changes. In terms of the current administration and views on immigration and how it may affect different nationalities, particularly in the Middle East, and we get the question, does this get tied up in the travel ban and so forth? The program itself has not been impacted by that at all. If you are from one of those particular countries, there's nothing in this program that says you can't apply or you won't be adjudicated or so forth. And we've had folks that are now, that applied before, that are in that, who have been, adjudicated. So the issue would come when you are approved, and that should not be held up. You shouldn't be treated any differently than anybody else. I had an opportunity to sit in recently with a meeting with the head of USCIS. That was point blank asked. They said, no, that's a different process than the travel process. The issue comes that when you have to travel to get your green card, will there be a problem with that? There's not a lot of guidance on that, other than I can tell you, I know that there is a means by which you can get an exception to any particular ban. There are people traveling from those countries. It's a little more difficult right now. I'm not an immigration attorney to tell you how to do that. But as you see, there is, unfortunately, on one hand, a lengthy process on applications, but maybe for people coming from some of these countries, not such a bad thing. It's going to take you 24 months for your application to be approved if you're from Iran, for example, or a country that might be affected from that. I think a lot of people in the country think that these things that are in place now are going to change and go away over time. And I think there's a lot of thought in the country that they should go away over time. So we're at a point where this administration has some very strong views that, frankly, in our democracy aren't shared by others, and that could change with the political environment starting this November, that there'll be some counter to that. So we do have some harsh things in the system now. They can be navigated around. They don't affect your processing of EB-5. And by the time you might need to travel, you can either use those ways to deal with it, or hopefully they won't even be there to begin with. So we've had active discussions with individuals on EB-5 that fall within those countries. And we don't try to hide anything, but we encourage them that they should still consider this, because at the end of the day, it's still a way for them to get permanent residency.
One of the concerns that I faced when I spoke to a number of investors, they said that, okay, I sign a contract, I send the money to the US, $500,000, that's not a big deal, but what if I'm rejected because of certain reasons that is beyond my control, or I don't know certain things, maybe I'll be rejected. So there's a fear factor among the investors. Now, is there a way you can address that, like getting a clearance first, yeah, the guy's clean, money is fine, and his nationality is okay, and then, is there a way that could be, tackled? Because
yeah.
I think
and people want, I understand that people want absolute certainty, and anybody who stands up and says, I can give you 100% certainty. I can give you factors with our offerings why you should feel very comfortable that will not happen. And let me just kind of mention how we do things. Number one, I have to start with our track record, and we do that by working with strong immigration counsel that really makes sure that your application is well done and filed and done in the right way. That's why it's way above the industry average. Everybody who files has that kind of concern, because you have to get to why would you be rejected, okay? Why you would be rejected would be only a couple things. One is the project doesn't qualify as EB-5. The project gets rejected for that purpose. Now, we've never had a project was rejected. And the offering that we have out in the market right now, that we have a few units left on, that's actually already has, this project I just mentioned, it hasn't been approved yet. But we're on track record of getting projects approved. If you say, I appreciate that, but we have this other project that has approval, so check that box. You wouldn't get disapproved because the project would be approved, because I can give you a project that has been approved. The other thing is that we can, again, we work with you, we get your immigration, get you good immigration counsel who specializes in EB-5 to go through your source of funds. Because the source of funds is the other thing that can be problematic. It's the project, and it's the money that you bring if the government doesn't feel comfortable that they can identify where the funds come from. And we work with the Immigration Council that sometimes says to an investor, I'm not saying anything bad about you, but it's not going to work. And better that you know that now. And we don't want to take your money in that place. So we can tell up front by who we work with and what you sit down with, whether there's going to be an issue or not. So we're very, very comfortable on that. Last thing, and it's unique to this last offering that I mentioned, because it has two kinds of investors in it, what we're offering to those individuals here. Again, we don't see any problem with the project. We don't see any problem if we have you working with the right counsel, that your source of funds will pass muster. But just in case, what we're also offering is if you're rejected as a Class B investor, for your EB5, we will bump up your return. So while you may need to stay in the project's still good, it's paying a return, we will bump up your return up to that Class A level as compensation. And it's a 4-year period. So what's the worst thing that happens to you in that case? You have made an investment, you get repaid in 4 years, but you earn a decent rate of return. And it's unfortunate what happened with your immigration. We don't think it's going to happen. But if it does, we will in essence, compensate you. So we do what we can to make sure that doesn't happen. But every time we appreciate that people are very concerned about that, and I understand.
When it comes to job creation, I think one of the key investment or the first step would be to invest in a manufacturing unit or an industrial unit where you can create the jobs faster and seed. Now, most of your investment are in real estate and other similar asset classes. So why not investing in industries where direct job creation, and it's faster?
Yeah.
So
you make a lot of sense, and that's very logical. That's not the way the government program works, though. The rules that they've given us on how we can count jobs actually works in favor of investing in the kind of projects that we do. Because right around the time we did our first investments, they changed the requirement that you actually had to identify that body as counting as a job. And they let us use these economic impact models, which means tell us what you spent on the project, tell us what the project generated, like hotel revenues and so forth. We'll put it into an economic model, and that will identify how much that spending created in the economy. So they're really counting the jobs of the person who produced, brought in the lumber to build something, or the concrete, or the steel. They're actually counting those jobs. The example I give is that one hotel, which is a nice big hotel. When we use our economic impact model, that showed from the expenditure of the dollars and from the revenues, you can add up and down, there's over 800 jobs, 890, something like that. And I use that with Weston, and somebody says, there's not 890 workers in there. I go, that's not how they count jobs. So the program rules that the government sets have really, and that's why there's a lot of real estate developers who use EB5, because their projects cost a lot of money, they bring in a lot of revenues, and they create jobs pursuant to the government rules.
Okay, I have another question. Actually, I've got 3 more questions.
Oh.
What happens if I invest, right, and you've done the application and the project cannot continue, for whatever reason, acts of God or mismanagement, whatever. What happens to my money, and what happens to my most important application?
Yeah. And what you're getting at, and what you have to always remember here, there's 2 trains running down the road at the same time. There's the immigration process, and there's your investment. And they're related, but they're different. They're different issues. So you can be invested in a project that meets the requirements for job creation, and you get your green card, and you don't. But something fails with the project, and you don't get repaid. None of these things, by the way, has happened with us, but that's happened. Okay. You can also do something where they took your money, it didn't generate enough jobs, you didn't get your green card, but they repaid you at the end of the day. So either things happen. They're sort of independent events. Obviously, the worst thing that can happen is that you make an investment, they don't use all your money, or they don't build it all, so they can't repay you, and they don't build it enough so that you get your green card. So any of those combinations can't happen. It's why you as an investor and we as somebody who presents investment opportunities to you, you want to make sure a couple things. You want to really care about that analysis, what an independent economist said. If this project happens, it will create this job, according to USCIS rules. So that's good. Okay, now I want to really make sure, is that project really going to happen? Again, one of the projects that we have that we're finishing up here, it's actually already been built. So it's actually already created the jobs that you need to show. You might say, how do they let me do that? The government lets us use bridge financing, other funds that we can then take out with EB-5. So those are very strong projects for EB-5 purposes because we can already show you the actual jobs that have been created so you can get your green card at the end of the day. Flat, that grass is still there right now. It hasn't happened yet. But what I'm going to be presenting to you is that when we close and take your money, all the money is going to be there. The equity is going to be there, and this is going to be there. And this is the developer who's built all this stuff around it. So could he fly off somewhere? I don't think that's going to happen, but we give you a picture where your money will not be the first money to go in.
No, I know. You see, I'm a banker and I'm a cruise now.
Yeah, okay.
So I'm just
Well,
giving
I'm trying to tell you, we act like a bank.
In paper, everything could look very fine, nothing is going to happen. Okay, but I'm taking a walking situation.
Yeah.
Okay, and people are there. I'm $500,000
Yeah.
for many people.
Yeah.
Okay, and the thing is, if the project does not happen after 2 years stops, so I get the provisional green card and the US immigration to see whether real job creation has been done. So if I'm stuck halfway, what is my security? Get my point.
I'm sorry.
Firstly, my money, and then of course the process will it stop or what happens?
Are you saying a situation where the project doesn't happen, but you've gotten your condition?
Your problem stopped halfway.
Okay.
There's so many
You could
projects
you could get
your
your conditional green card because the project gets approved.
Yes,
and,
okay.
and they look at the economics report and so forth. But if it stops and it doesn't produce all the jobs, you will not get your permanent green card because you won't be able. You do not get your permanent green card because you won't be able to show all the jobs that got created. Now, with this one, and you could nod at them, and with this project that shows if you build it, and I think did we just use construction or just use construction? Okay. There's two ways to show jobs in EB-5. The building of the project, okay, and then the revenues that come from it when those tenants. The best kind of projects that I can present to you in EB-5 is we don't worry about the revenues. As you say, maybe they won't happen. We just look at construction.
So 5-year construction period, the jobs are created. Yeah.
So if what that economics report says is if this thing just gets built, if those tenants never move in, but if this thing gets built, it produces 20 jobs per investor. So that suggests to me, if it gets halfway built and it gets stopped, at least, so you'll at least have enough jobs for 10, because you need 10 for your requirement. So to your question with this one, if this project stops halfway, it probably still can produce the number of jobs for you. If it gets built entirely, but never gets occupied, it's more than that. Now, if it doesn't get occupied, it may not pay you back. It may not pay us back. But you'll get a green card.
Now another question.
Okay.
I don't take the other one. Let's say I give you the money, right? Because I'm giving you the money. My contract is with you, and you invest it or lend it to those guys, right? What happens if you close, you have fighting partners, you go bankrupt, if something happens, external to our thing, what happens to my money and the process of getting the green card?
Well, it's a special purpose entity that is set up to take in money and to manage. And that company is Adam, myself, and our Chamber of Commerce. So, again, we are independently, one of those entities would take over the project and the management, and I assume if there was an issue with Adam and myself, it would be the Chamber of Commerce would manage that and take responsibility as the manager.
No, you know why? risk I'm saying is that I give you my money and you lend it to those guys, and something not related to this project, you have some legal dispute, right? And they attach all your assets and all. My money also gets stuck. Do I go through an escrow trust relationship,
Now, do you,
or what happens?
well, we wouldn't be, I think this company is bankruptcy remote from any of our particular
So
products.
any company
Yeah.
is remote from bankruptcy till they go bankrupt. You know, look at the big example. 11 brothers, too big to fail. Anything. You know, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that from the investor's point of view,
Mhm.
do we have some security that money goes to a trust fund? You know, get my point. Or you say you have a trusted relationship with me. Anything happens to your company doesn't affect my money.
Well, what I would do, because I feel a little bit unqualified to give you a real technical answer on this, is I'd welcome having our lawyer show you how the payments from this to the manager to the corporate entity, and then the corporate entity is actually owned by another entity, which is where Adam and my ownership is.
If there was a situation where there was a bankruptcy in our ownership of the parent company, it would end up in the United States, the court system, it would end up with a receiver, right? And you as a member, as a unit holder in that company, which is, to your point, an asset of that parent company, you would have a seat at that table, and that receiver, you'd be ahead. Your interest in that company would be ahead of any creditor that gave it to the parent.
No, because you see, when a company is liquidated, right? You see, so a company is now worth 10 million, it will be worth 2 million.
Right.
So my money, and then the US immigration might say, no, your investment is now 200,000. Or, you know, when my immigration policy goes through, fine, that application. But the return and my capital, I don't get my money back. He said, I'm sure that in many circumstances, the investor's money is put in a trust. Let's say I'm a stockbroker, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you give me your money is separate from my company's money. That's an investment, that's a trust, if I know what I forgot the exact term. If anything happens to me, it does not touch your money. It doesn't affect your money. Is there any sort of relationship? Because you are just an advisor kind of thing, right? But still I give you, like a stockbroker, I give you my money and you invest in a stock, right?
Well, right. Let me, and I'd be happy, maybe we could kind of map out a structure.
Take the note. I'm just saying that these are the questions many of the investors here will ask.
The short answer, I think Adam was getting at this, the short answer is that the interests of the investors in this company are ahead of the, there are the investors and there's the manager. The manager is not actually Adam and I. The manager is the company, which is in turn owned ultimately by us. What the manager can get from this company from payments that come in is limited, it's restricted, okay? So when that management money, which is restricted to a certain amount, goes up, then a receiver can do whatever they do. But your interest in that company is ahead of anything that would go to deal with a receiver.
And there's actually a real-time example of how that's played out, because it happened to a regional center in Vermont, JP. So we could put together, if that's a concern, I appreciate it's a concern, we could put together a case study as to how it was handled in the bankruptcy courts. And a receiver was appointed to handle the various assets of that regional center. And the primary focus, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was making sure that those investors were taken care of from the immigration standpoint and from their interest in that LLC or that investment vehicle.
Anyway,
and they are kept in their own bank accounts.
Not necessarily I want the answer now,
Yeah.
but I think in the communication, the
Okay.
slides and transition. Another thing, your fees, right?
Yeah.
Once I give you money and you process money, I give you some fees.
There are two types of fees that are associated in addition to the $500,000 investment. Okay. There is you paying. Well, no, there's 3 fees. Thank you. 3 fees as well. 3 fees. There is a fee to the government. How much is that? These days, 6. Couple thousand dollars. Okay, that's a government fee. There's what you pay your immigration counsel.
Yeah.
Okay, right now. That varies depending on which counsel. recommend certain people. We want to make sure you have a qualified one, but
No, first is the government fees and then
then there's,
the
you have to
administrative
pay,
council.
yeah, the council, they help prepare your application, okay? And then there's typically regional centers charge an administrative fee.
So that's your fees.
That's our fees. It usually handles like a cost for like being here, those kind of things.
How much that?
Well, that has varied over time. I will tell you what it is with these two projects that we have.
Is it a percentile amount, is it a lump sum amount? Or?
So traditionally, as these were mainly marketed in China, they were 9 to 10% of principal amount. So they were anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay, for the whole thing.
I'm going to get you the good punchline here.
Yeah.
Let me be a salesman. We have a couple units left in the other project that I mentioned. We are waiving the admin fee for that in order to get the last few units. And we are also agreeable to help you pay for the immigration council. So bottom line for this project that we have right now, a few more units, it'll only be $500,000. Okay? For this project, we're just starting. The admin fee for this project is $25,000.
25,000.
It's $25,000.
Okay. Now, I give you my money, and then you lend to the project, right?
Yes.
Are you surely you are also keeping a margin there, right?
Yeah, we make a difference between and that our margin is what's called the management fee. In that little, I'll put that.
Okay, so
Yeah, we make the difference between what we pay out to the
Yeah.
different investors and the loan rate.
so let's say they borrow from you at 4%, and you give me a return of 2.5%. Are you giving the 1.5% then?
We keep the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and we call
how
it,
much is that?
it's in the management fee. I'll put that slide back up. You're a banker. You'll do the math.
Yeah.
Okay? You'll figure it out. Okay, so we make the loan rate for this loan is 7.3%. Okay? We have two kinds of investors. One group of investors we pay 6.25%.
Yeah.
Another group of investors we pay 2.5%. A smaller group, the EB5 group. Okay?
Yeah, EB5, so 2.5.
Okay. Then, so we make the difference between those.
How much? So 7 and 2.5.
Yeah, but there's more Class A's and Class B's. Okay? So that margin is us.
So on my fund you make 4.5% from that lending.
Yeah, but I'm only going to sell 2.5 million of that. For the Class A's, where there's 10 million of Class A's,
Yeah.
I'm going to make a margin of 1 point on that. There are 2.5 million of Class B's. Yes, I make a bigger margin on that. I have a lot more expenses with EB5 too. Also, we believe we're going to get this additional interest. At maturity, we're going to get a kicker. Usually senior lenders don't get a kicker. We get a kicker based on what the project appraises for at that point. Of that kicker, the investors will get close to 90% of that, pro rata, and the manager will get 10%. So we're going to make money on the spread for 4 years, and we will get 10% of the kicker. 90% will go to the investors. That's our deal. And the overall return for the investors, depending if you're just looking at an EB5 deal, if you were just a Class A investor, we believe the total estimated return will be 8.4%. If you only bought Class A's, if you weren't interested in EB5. What I showed at the bottom was...
we are talking here EB5.
Okay.
We are not here for investing.
Okay.
Kind of
If you said I want to do the minimum,
yeah.
if I want to do the minimum, I want to spend $500,000 before it goes up, so something higher, you would make 2.5% annually. We're going to pay that quarterly, by the way. And then you'll get a kicker that will take it, we estimate, it's based on an appraisal.
Yeah.
The lower number is an appraisal, third-party appraisal that we had done. The other number, the higher number, is what the developer thinks. The developer always thinks it's going to do better, right? Although this is the developer who usually hits his numbers. So overall, at the end of the day, an EB5 investor, only EB5, in addition to the green card, will get a total return total average return over 4 years of somewhere between 3.3 to 4.8%.
Oh, thank you.
And by EB5 standards, traditionally, that's a very good EB5 return. Go check around. Good questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we can take a break. break for coffee? Yeah.
Break for coffee? Okay. I can keep going. But I'll be around, and certainly please stay and ask any more questions.